Hello, and welcome to Aviation Deep Dive. Finland's battle in the skies during the Winter War, and then later the Continuation War, would produce many aces and legends that are still pretty famous to this day. Stories of Jorma Sarvanto shooting down 6 Soviet bombers in 4 minutes, or Ilmari Juutilainen becoming the highest-ranking Finnish ace ever, have gone down in history and become famous figures of aviation fans today. Today, we are looking at a Finnish ace from the Second World War, maybe not quite as famous as the 2 previously mentioned, but no less deserving of coverage. Oiva Tuominen was born on the 5th of January 1908, completing his national service with the Finnish Air Force in 1926. Despite his lack of formal education, he was trained as an assistant mechanic, after which he had the opportunity to graduate to pilot training or become a professional mechanic instead. Funnily enough, Tuominen opted out of pilot training, according to the wishes of his mother, who considered piloting a very dangerous job. Working as a mechanic for the next 6 years until 1933, he finally couldn't resist his heart and gave in to his dream of becoming a pilot. On the 1st of November 1933, he was transferred for official training to begin. By 1938, he had been promoted to sergeant and transferred to 26th Squadron, an operational unit equipped with Bristol Bulldogs. Throughout his training, Tuominen had demonstrated incredible intuition and marksmanship, as well as incredible eyesight. His one character flaw, in the eyes of his superiors, was that he was rather stubborn. This, however, was perhaps the instructors misinterpreting his confidence, as Tuominen would very quickly prove his capability in a combat environment. As the skies darkened during the winter of 1939, and Soviet bombers began crossing over into Finnish skies, Tuominen, flying with 24th Squadron, had moved onto Fokker D-21s, an interwar Dutch design that would go on to earn much acclaim in Finnish service, despite being somewhat obsolete. On Christmas Day of 1939, 24th Squadron and Tuominen would receive their baptism of fire, when a flight of 4 Fokkers led by Tuominen intercepted a formation of 6 DB-3 Soviet bombers.
Uusi neuvostopommari. Liikehtikäyttäjät takaampuja saatteita.
Selvä.
The 4 Finnish fighters settled in behind the DB-3s, firing short bursts into the aircraft and weaving to avoid the return fire. One of the pilots, Sakari Ikonen, diving in on one of the 6 DB-3s, managed to send a lethal volley from his 4 machine guns into the bomber, the first confirmed kill.
Toinen vihollinen alas.
Lieutenant Erik Suvelius would claim the second just 5 minutes later.
Se on toinen tuo.
Hyvää työtä, Suvelius. Sitten luvut 4.
Finally, 2 Fokkers on the tail of a single DB-3 would manage to send the aircraft earthwards with an engine fire. Oiva Tuominen and Kelpo Virta sharing the aerial victory. Of the 24 bombers originally sent out, 3 had been destroyed by the small flight of 4 Fokkers, and it would be indicative of the incredible efficiency the Finns would end up showing in their fighters. 6 days later, on the 31st of December, Tuominen was promoted to flight sergeant. Oiva Tuominen would continue to see service with the Fokker D-21s in 24th Squadron until February 1940, when he was transferred to a squadron flying Gloster Gladiators. This would be one of the fighters with which he would go on to earn much acclaim for, eventually becoming the most successful Finnish Gladiator ace. His first sortie with the Gladiator would take place on the 2nd of February, taking off with a wingman to intercept a detachment of 2 DB-3s and 6 I-16s. Despite being outnumbered 3-1 by enemy fighters, Tuominen and his wingman engaged the Soviet fighters, the interception turning into a messy brawl.
Se läksi. Irtaudu. Yksi tiputettu. Osuin kuskiin. 3 perässäni. Tee taisteli. Yksi vahingoittanut. Tulen tähän perään. on ovela. Osuin sen siipeen.
In the incredible battle, Tuominen had downed 2 of the I-16s and damaged another, bringing his total aerial victory count to 2.5, halfway to becoming an ace. One of the I-16s had been totally lost, crashing and killing the pilot, whilst the other had been forced to make an emergency landing at Kotka, inside Finnish lines. Barely given any respite from the intense fighting, however, just 11 days later a number of Finnish gladiators were scrambled to intercept a large approaching bomber force. Once airborne, the Finns were set upon by a group of 9 I-15s. During the fight, one gladiator, piloted by Knut Kalmberg, was set upon and fired at by 3 I-15s. Attempting to dive away, his damaged aircraft reacted badly to his rapid input and went into a flat spin. Unfortunately, he couldn't recover in time and the aircraft struck the ground, killing the pilot instantly. Heavily outnumbered, another gladiator pilot was badly hit.
Perkele, kun osuin. Minä vuodan. Irtaudun ja suuntaan kotia kohti.
Pulling away from the combat, losing blood and altitude, he just managed to pull off an emergency landing before losing consciousness. One rather interesting fact from this battle was Niilo Artola, not a pilot of the 26th Squadron, but instead a Blackburn Ripon pilot of 16th Squadron. He had in fact been on a training flight with the Gladiator as part of his transition to the type, when he had seen the battle and flown over to take part. Joining the dogfight, he wasn't even sure how to operate the guns, as he had just begun his transition to the Gladiator. Nevertheless, he managed to work it out and fire a burst on an I-15 that was trailing a friendly Gladiator. Oiva Tuominen and his wingman Lauri Lautamäki, meanwhile, had actually managed to find the formation of 9 bombers that the Gladiators had originally been scrambled to intercept and proceeded to attack them. As Tuominen recounted,
Ollessani lentomestari Lautamäen kanssa partioimassa Jänisjärven aseman lähettyvillä huomasin 9 SB:n tulevan Soonlahden itäpuolelta suunta länteen. Annoin lentomestari Lautamäelle merkin ja läksin viholliskoneita vastaan. Vihollismuodostelma teki kaarron itään ja pääsin Soonjoen itäpuolella tuntumaan ja ammuin tuleen vasemman siipikoneen, joka syöksyi metsään. Samoin seuraava noin minuutin jälkeen. Kolmas, jota ammuin, syöksyi erääseen pikkulampeen. Loimolasta päin tuli lisää 9 SB:tä, jotka liittyivät samaan muodostelmaan. Luulin niitä ensin hävittäjiksi ja jäin vähän, mutta sain ne kiinni Kivijärven lähellä ja ammuin oikeaa siipikonetta, joka jäi jälkeen. Ampuessani siihen toisen sarjan, se syöksyi Kivijärven pohjoisrantaan jäähän palavana. Samalla jäältä starttasi I-15, jonka ammuin heti metsän reunassa, johon se syöksyi palavana. Maasta ampuivat minun koneeni siipeen 2 reikää. Oma kone GL-255.
Tuominen had proved himself time and time again. By now, his number of aerial victories had cemented his title as an ace, and his extraordinary piloting skills earned him the respect and admiration of his fellow pilots. Lauri Lautamäki, Tuominen's frequent wingman, commented,
Mä mietin, miten Oippa saa tehtyä sen. Hän vaan ruiskauttaa kerran ja pommikone on liekeissä. Mun täytyy ampua moneen kertaan, että saan saman tuloksen.
Tuominen, however, was not particularly humble about his talents. Perhaps rightfully so. He took immense pride in his tally of aerial victories, and in fact, after his transfer to the Fiat G.50 fighter in March 1940, he would claim 2 enemy bombers shot down that had also been under fire from AA just before Tuominen intercepted them. The destroyed aircraft were credited to the anti-aircraft batteries, which enraged Tuominen, who insisted that the wreck should be examined to determine who shot them down. His squadron leader refused. By the end of the Winter War in March, the Finnish ace had already become a famous figure amongst the ranks of the Finnish Air Force, and over the following months he would become extremely proficient in the G.50, taking to the design with great strides. He had achieved 11 aerial victories during the hectic air battles of the Winter War, and it had served to hone the skills of an incredibly talented airman even further. Hot-headed clashes with his superiors would remain, however. In June 1941, just before the outbreak of the Continuation War, he took his G.50 on a test flight and proceeded to fly inverted over a lake, reportedly scarcely clearing the tops of the waves. The G.50's Fiat radial engine had a tendency to leak oil when inverted for prolonged periods, thus inducing a risk of fire. And so, upon landing, Tuominen was reprimanded by his furious superior. Tuominen coolly responded, "In piloting, I am able to do whatever I want to do, whilst others are constrained by what their abilities allow them to do." On the 25th of June, the day the Finns were prompted to join the Continuation War by the Soviet bombing of Finnish cities, Tuominen was in fact in custody, a punishment for breaching Soviet airspace days before. On the 4th of July, Tuominen would fly his first combat sortie of the Continuation War, scramble to intercept a group of 12 DB-3s. Setting up a head-on approach, with excellent marksmanship, Tuominen was able to down the first DB-3 with a single burst straight into the cockpit, and circle back round to set up another approach. Pulling up just 20 meters port of one of the bombers, Tuominen's G-50 was rocked by a burst of fire from the DB-3. Leaking fuel from a pierced fuel tank, Tuominen did not break off, instead continuing his attack, sending 2 more Soviet bombers earthwards in flames before being forced to break off due to low fuel. Ultimately, a further DB-3 had in fact gone down after its engine had sustained damage and had been forced down in the forest of Tohmajärvi. An interesting episode followed after one of the surviving Russian gunners was taken in for questioning. Tuominen was introduced to the man that he had shot down just that morning, though the Soviet gunner asked how they could be so sure that it was him who had taken part in the combat. The gunner was convinced that at least 3 aircraft had attacked from the formation, and it took some time to convince him that it had been only Tuominen who had been responsible for attacking the formation. After learning of this information, the Soviet gunner greeted the Finnish pilot and said,
«Неужто это знаменитый Сарванта?»
After being told who Tuominen was, the gunner said,
«Ну что же, хочу поздравить вас с этим достижением. Финским летчикам крупно повезло, что среди них есть такие, как Сарванта и вы, гроза наших бомбардировщиков».
Tuominen continued to see extensive combat against the swathes of SB and DB bombers that became common sights over Finnish skies, constantly adding to his tally over the course of July. On the 3rd of August 1941, Tuominen and a wingman would encounter a slightly less often seen target, a group of 3 MBR flying boats flying low altitude over the waters of South Finland. The wingman, Lauri Sikvo, closed in first, firing on the aircraft at the left of the formation. Smoking, the MBR was then set upon by Tuominen, who had caught up, who sent a volley from the G-50's twin heavy machine guns into the engine nacelle, causing it to explode and fall into the waters. Sikvo then turned to another MBR, raking its fuselage with bullets and setting it on fire, causing it to crash. Moving on to the 3rd, Tuominen then closed in and sent the aircraft down with a burst from his machine gun.
3 maassa, loistosuoritus.
In the following months, he continued to add to his tally, scoring swathes of victories against DB-3s, SBs, I-15s and I-16s, as well as some slightly more exotic aircraft such as Lend-Lease Hurricanes. For a number of months over 1941 and 1942, 26th Squadron was essentially grounded due to issues with spare parts and the Italian engines of the Fiats being worn out. This, as well as the increasing obsolescence of the G.50, prompted the 34th Squadron to switch over to the far more capable Bf-109 Gustavs, the unit to which Tuominen was posted to in February 1943. His first victory with the 109G would be on the 23rd of April, where he would encounter a single PE-2 on a reconnaissance mission. In contrast to the G-50, the devastating armament of the 109G, which consisted of an assortment of a single 20mm cannon and twin 13mm machine guns, would make short work of any aircraft. His next kill with the type would come on the 2nd of May against a Lend-Lease Boston bomber. Through the remainder of 1943, the Finns would find themselves against a different enemy than they had known in the preceding years. Better training, better aircraft, and better tactics meant that the Soviets were not such easy prey as they had been. Throughout the rest of 1943, Tuominen would claim 15 kills, 9 of which were fighters. 1944 would slow down even further, with 3 PE-2s shot down in the first 7 months of the year. However, sparkles of combat from the earlier days shone on, and so on the 15th of July, he would put the 109G through its paces as a dogfighter, when a number of 109s from 34th Squadron clashed with a formation of Yak-9s and LA-5s. In the ensuing brawl, Tuominen would be able to get on the 6 of a Yak-9 and send a fatal burst into it, as well as shooting down an LA-5. 3 days later, he would down another Yak-9, which would turn out to be his final victory of the war. Throughout the early war, the ace had shown his excellent skills in both the Gladiator and the G.50, racking up 9 kills in the Gladiator and 25 with the G.50. Retiring from the Finnish Air Force service on the 6th of January 1945, Tuominen had become Finland's 5th highest ranking fighter ace during the Second World War, with a total of 44 victories. A huge thanks to my patrons on screen now for supporting the channel, and thank you so much for watching this video of Aviation Deep Dive. Consider liking and subscribing for more weekly content, and please also consider supporting us on Patreon. See you in the skies.